Far beyond the known seas, surrounded by sapphire waters and towering cliffs, lay the prosperous nation of Eldoria. For generations, Eldoria had been blessed. Its rivers carried fresh water year-round. Its fertile plains produced enough food to feed neighboring countries. Its mountains were rich with precious minerals, and its bustling ports attracted merchants from every corner of the world. Yet, despite its wealth, many citizens struggled. Corruption had quietly infected the government over the years. Roads crumbled. Hospitals lacked medicine. Schools operated with broken desks and leaking roofs. People were desperate for change, and that was when President Victor Draven appeared. At 50 years old, Victor was charming, intelligent, and gifted with words. He knew exactly what people wanted to hear. When he spoke, crowds listened. When he smiled, people trusted him. When he promised change, they believed him. During his campaign, Victor traveled across Eldoria. He visited fishing villages. He walked through poor neighborhoods. He sat with farmers beneath mango trees. Everywhere he went, he repeated the same message. My fellow Eldorians, our nation is rich, yet our people remain poor. This ends today. The crowds cheered. The wealth of Eldoria belongs to its citizens, not corrupt politicians. Thunderous applause followed. I will build roads. I will create jobs. I will improve hospitals. I will return dignity to every family. Hope spread like wildfire. People who had stopped believing in politics began believing again. When election day arrived, Victor won by a landslide. The entire nation celebrated. Fireworks lit the night sky. Music echoed through city streets. Families danced until sunrise. Many believed Eldoria's golden age had finally begun. They had no idea they had just elected its greatest thief. The day after his inauguration, Victor held a secret meeting inside the presidential palace. Present were his wife, his brothers, his cousins, and several wealthy businessmen who had financed his campaign. The massive oak doors closed. The room fell silent. Victor stood before a giant map of Eldoria. Then he smiled. The people have given us the key to the treasury. The room erupted with laughter. One businessman asked, "And what do we do now?" Victor looked around the room. We take everything. At first, nobody noticed. Government contracts worth billions were awarded to companies owned by Victor's relatives. Construction projects existed only on paper. Money disappeared from public accounts. Entire budgets vanished. Road projects were announced but never completed. Schools were approved but never built. Hospitals received funding that somehow never arrived. Whenever journalists asked questions, government officials responded with prepared statements. The president is working tirelessly. The administration remains committed to progress. The opposition is spreading misinformation. Many people believed them. For a while, 6 months into his presidency, Victor launched what he called the National Development Initiative. The program sounded noble. The government claimed large amounts of land were needed for factories, industrial zones, and modern cities. But there was a hidden agenda. Government officials began arriving in farming communities carrying documents. Families who had owned land for generations were suddenly informed their property belonged to the state. Many refused to leave. Some produced ownership papers dating back decades. Others begged officials to reconsider. Nobody listened. Bulldozers arrived. Police accompanied them. Entire villages were demolished. Homes were destroyed. Fruit orchards were uprooted. Farmers watched helplessly as generations of family history disappeared beneath machines. Months later, the truth emerged. The land was never intended for development. It had been secretly transferred to companies controlled by Victor's family. Luxury resorts appeared. Private ranches were built. Exclusive estates surrounded by high walls replaced humble villages. The president's relatives became unimaginably wealthy. The displaced families became homeless. As Victor's power grew, so did his greed. Soon, he began traveling abroad. He visited wealthy nations. He attended international economic summits. He met bankers, investors, and foreign leaders. On television, Eldorians watched proudly as their president shook hands with powerful people. Victor spoke eloquently about economic growth, infrastructure, modernization, investment opportunities. Foreign governments trusted him. International lenders trusted him. Loans worth billions of dollars flowed into Eldoria. The nation celebrated. Citizens believed highways would be built. They expected modern hospitals, new schools, reliable electricity, better water systems. Instead, much of the money disappeared. Some was hidden in offshore accounts. Some purchased mansions abroad. Some funded luxury businesses owned by Victor's family. The debt belonged to Eldoria. The wealth belonged to Victor. Within 3 years, the consequences became impossible to ignore. Food prices doubled, then tripled. Fuel became expensive. Electricity bills skyrocketed. Transportation costs soared. Small businesses began closing. Factories laid off workers. Families struggled to survive. At markets across Eldoria, mothers stared at food prices with disbelief. A sack of rice that once fed a family for weeks now cost nearly a month's wages. Children went to bed hungry. Elderly citizens skipped meals. People who had once lived comfortably suddenly found themselves in poverty. Yet every evening, government television insisted the economy was thriving. The lies became increasingly absurd. Among those speaking out was a respected senator named Daniel Corvin. Daniel had once supported Victor, but after witnessing the suffering of ordinary citizens, he could no longer remain silent. During a parliamentary session broadcast nationwide, Daniel stood and addressed the assembly. "The people are suffering." Silence filled the chamber. "Our debt is growing." More silence. "Our land is being stolen." Nervous glances spread across the room. "Our future is being sold." The room became completely still. Everyone understood the danger of those words. Inside the presidential palace, Victor watched the broadcast. His expression remained calm, but his eyes narrowed. He turned to his security chief. "Destroy him." Within days, state media began attacking Daniel. Anonymous accusations appeared online. Government-controlled newspapers published scandalous stories. Television commentators called him a traitor. Then came the arrest. Before dawn, armed officers stormed Daniel's home. His wife and children watched in horror. He was accused of corruption, espionage, and conspiring with foreign enemies. The charges were entirely fabricated, but facts no longer mattered. The courts obeyed the government. Daniel was sentenced to prison. The message was clear: oppose Victor, and your life will be destroyed. Fear spread across Eldoria. Journalists became cautious. Activists became silent. Business leaders avoided criticism. Even ordinary citizens lowered their voices when discussing politics. The president's grip on power tightened. Yet something was changing beneath the surface. People were growing angry. Very angry. The breaking point came during Victor's 5th year in office. Another massive foreign loan had been secured. Government officials celebrated. State television praised the achievement. Yet ordinary people saw no benefit. Prices increased again. Taxes increased again. Life became harder again. This time, citizens had enough. Thousands gathered peacefully in Liberty Square, the largest public space in the capital city of Aramor. They carried signs. "Where did the money go? Return our land. We are hungry. Do your job or resign." The demonstration was peaceful. People sang songs. Families attended together. Students marched beside workers. Farmers stood beside teachers. For the first time in years, people felt united. The government ignored them. Officials dismissed the protests. Government spokesmen claimed foreign powers were responsible. State television refused to show the demonstrations. But the crowds kept growing. 10,000 became 50,000. 50,000 became 100,000. Soon every major city in Eldoria had peaceful demonstrations. The people had one simple demand: serve the nation you promised to serve. Inside the presidential palace, officials laughed. "They'll get tired." One minister said, "They always do." Victor agreed, "Let them shout." But the protests did not fade. They expanded. Each day brought larger crowds. Each week brought greater anger. The nation was awakening. Then disaster struck. A severe drought hit the countryside. Food production collapsed. Prices exploded. Desperation spread everywhere. the government still refused to act. Instead, officials focused on protecting themselves. Luxury convoys sped through the capital. Politicians continued enjoying lavish lifestyles, while ordinary citizens suffered. Government elites through extravagant parties. Videos of these celebrations leaked online. The public outrage became explosive. Millions took to the streets, not with weapons, not with violence, but with determination. The demonstrations remained peaceful. People marched carrying candles. Others carried national flags. Some carried photographs of family members who had lost homes, jobs, or businesses. The message was unmistakable. The government had failed, yet officials remained indifferent. They lived behind high walls, protected by security forces, insulated from the suffering around them. They ignored the cries of the people, ignored the hunger, ignored the unemployment, ignored the collapsing healthcare system, ignored the farmers who had lost everything, ignored the youth who saw no future, ignored an entire nation. Then came the leak. A young accountant working within the Ministry of Finance secretly copied thousands of confidential files. The documents revealed everything: secret bank accounts, luxury properties, foreign investments, hidden companies, stolen public funds. The evidence was overwhelming. Citizens finally saw proof of what they had suspected for years. Their suffering had funded the luxury lifestyles of a small political elite. The outrage became unstoppable. Even members of Victor's own government began abandoning him. Some resigned, others fled the country. Several publicly admitted they had participated in corruption. The walls protecting the president began to crack. One evening, Victor stood alone in the presidential palace. Outside, millions of peaceful protesters filled the streets. Their chants echoed through the city: "Serve the people! Serve the people! Serve the people!" The sound seemed endless. For years he had ignored them. Now he could not escape them. He walked through enormous halls, decorated with gold and marble. Every luxury around him had been purchased with stolen wealth. Yet for the first time, none of it brought comfort. The palace felt empty, cold, silent. The power he had spent years accumulating was slipping away. Not because of an army, not because of foreign enemies, but because ordinary citizens had finally found their voice. As dawn approached, Victor looked out over the city. The streets below were filled with people demanding accountability. Farmers, teachers, doctors, students, workers, parents, grandparents, an entire nation united. And for the first time since becoming president, Victor felt something he had never expected to feel: fear, because he finally understood a truth that every corrupt ruler eventually learns. A leader may steal money, a leader may steal land, a leader may silence opponents, a leader may imprison critics, a leader may manipulate the truth, but eventually, the people see reality for themselves. And when millions of citizens lose their fear, no palace wall is high enough, no security force is large enough, and no amount of stolen wealth is powerful enough to stop them. The story of Victor Draven would later become one of the most important lessons in Eldorian history, not because of how much he stole, but because he showed an entire nation what happens when those entrusted to serve the people decide instead to serve only themselves. A reminder that the greatest danger to a nation is not an invading army, a natural disaster, or economic hardship. It is a leader who convinces people he is their savior while quietly becoming their greatest enemy.